Today we're going to talk about randomness, all the different ways that you can do random things or get random results using Monk's active tiles. So the first one is very simple blanket randomness that the tile itself will only randomly trigger on a percentage that you set. So you can see I'm entering the tile a whole bunch of times, but it's only triggering some of the time. Okay, now this one is very, very simple to set up. Just in your triggers, in your setup here, you just set the percentage chance to trigger. And that's all there is to it. You just enter the number here or move the slide bar. But the drawback to this is it affects every trigger on this tile. So if you have a bunch of different triggers, entering the tile, exiting the tile, clicking on the tile, right-clicking on the tile, this flat percentage will be applied to every trigger. And you may not want that. You may want certain things to be random, but other things not to be random. So another way of doing it, if we come down here, this one, every time I step on it, it'll trigger 100% of the time. But when I click on it, sometimes it doesn't trigger, not triggered, not triggered, triggered, not triggered, not triggered. Okay, so you can get differing behaviors. And also with this one, you can have it trigger on not the percentage not coming up. So you can have an either or. Whereas this one, it just completely does nothing if it fails to trigger. So with this one, what we're using is the random action. So if we check down here, I'll show you where to find it. Random number action. So you set a percent. If that percent is true, it will continue on down to the next line. If there is a landing put in here for the fail, it will go to the fail if the percentage doesn't trigger. If there's nothing in here, then it will just stop. So you can see here for entering the tile, which happens 100% of the time. If we look back here, 100%. Every single time this gets triggered by something entering it, it will go off. There's a 33% chance that when I click on it, it will say click triggered. But there's a 66% chance that it won't. And when it doesn't, it comes down to this fail landing and it says that it didn't trigger. And then this combination of 100% trigger and percentage trigger is a method that I use in my mud and fire trap. If you want to see an implementation of that in an actual trap. Now, the next one is roll tables. You can trigger a roll table from a tile. Let's see if I can get a result other than 1 every time, just to prove that it is actually random. Come on. Wow, there we go. That's my kind of luck. Rolling that many 1s in a row, if anyone who's ever played with me knows that that's just how my luck works. But as you can see, it actually does roll random results. Okay, so the way this works is you do a roll table action. You select what roll table you want to use and use the targeting reticle. You go over to your roll tables here. You just target your roll table. And then whether you want it public, whether you want a chat message associated with the result, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Now, I'm not going to go into roll tables on this. There is an excellent in-depth video on roll tables over on the Bailey Wiki channel. Zephyr did it. So I don't need to rehash that here. You go over there, you check that out, and you will know absolutely everything you ever need to know about roll tables. I'm just letting you know that you can trigger a roll table from Monk's active tiles as a means of doing some kind of random behavior. Now, the next one down is, let's say I want an event to occur a random number of times. Well, this tile here, every time I step on it, it will randomly trigger between 1 and 10 times. So if I step on it here, triggers once. Again, I get lots of 1s. It sucks. And this time, it went 4 times. Okay. Now, the way we do this one is I set an index That's just for the displaying the count of how many times it goes off. But the important part is I'm setting this variable on this tile using the random number generation feature of JavaScript. Okay, so I'll show you how that works. We have math.floor, open bracket, math.random, open bracket, close bracket, times 10, close bracket, plus 1. And that will give us a random number between 1 and 10. I won't bother going into this, how this works. If you are a programmer, you'll already know. And if you're not a programmer, you don't care. So just copy this verbatim and you'll get a random number between 1 and 10. That stores that in a variable. And then we use the loop feature. And then for the setting the number of loops, the jump to landing down here, we set the number of loops to variable.loops. And loops is the variable that we put the random number in up here. I tried putting the math formula just in here and saving the step of storing it to a variable, but I couldn't get it to work. So whatever reason, that math function doesn't work when you put it in here, but when you assign it to a variable and then use the variable, it works. So we come down here, we have the top of the loop and the jump to landing is the bottom of the loop. And then inside the loop, I'm incrementing the index, which counts how many times we've gone through the loop. And then it just does scrolling text of whatever the index is. And then it waits 1 second, because if I didn't have that wait in there, all the scrolling text numbers would just appear right on top of each other and they would be illegible. So this, obviously, this is pointless. I mean, there's no reason to do this, but it does show how you can set up a loop that triggers a random number of times. Now, an obvious one that you guys may be thinking, well, why are you mentioning this? I am. It's right down here. You can also generate random numbers by rolling dice, obviously. And the way you do dice formulas is just 2 open square braces, your dice formula, and then 2 closed square braces. This can be, and including dice like that don't exist. So like you could do 1d7. And in this case, I'm assigning it to a variable. So I can store that number and then I can use that number in other actions however I want to. Now, the potential drawback to this is, let's go back to the chat here and we'll clear it out. When you use this, it generates chat cards for all the numbers that it generates, the random numbers that it generates. Now, maybe that's a good thing for you. You want to see that result. Or maybe you just find that really annoying, but it's not something that you can turn off. Every time you use a roll formula, you get a chat card. There's no choice about it. And the last example I want to show is how do you get a random sound effect? Now, I came up with a method for doing it where you would use the playlist command. And just as you saw me do on this previous one, where I go through a loop a random number of times, and I use the playlist command to do the next function, the next track function to a playlist a random number of times. And that would get me a random entry on the playlist. And that works. But as Krogard pointed out, there is a much easier way to do it that is actually a built-in feature. So you don't need to go through all the rigmarole that I did, because I never read the wiki. Again, as I said in a previous video, do as I say, not as I do. Read the wiki. I never read the wiki. I always come up with janky solutions just off the top of my head. But the way that you should do it is you just use the play sound command and you use a wildcard, an asterisk in the name, right? So you have your folder wherever your sound files are located. You have a bunch of sound files that all start out, you know, the beginning of the names, in this case, sound, and then whatever at the end. So it could be sound Bob, sound Jane, sound 1, sound 2, doesn't matter. The ending, it completely doesn't matter. All that matters is that the beginning part of the name matches. And it will randomly choose one of those from this folder, not just from like anywhere. They have to all be in the same folder and they all have to start with the same beginning. And then it'll randomly choose one from that and play it. So very simple to do random sound effects. You don't have to do the incredibly janky and convoluted way that I did it, but it's a way that I came up with, so I like it. And that's just a bunch of examples of different ways that you can do randomness, random behavior, random triggers, random percentage chances for things using Monk's active tiles. Hopefully you guys found this helpful. Have a good one.